Challenging, thought-provoking, insightful. This is God in Country, the collision of faith and politics, hosted by nationally known speaker, Reverend Dr. Sean Michael Greener. Not your typical Rev. Dr. Sean is a proud military veteran, former law enforcement officer, and founder of the internationally regarded Executive Protection Team. Through counseling, elite life coaching, and national speaking, this ninja pastor tells it like it is. This series is biblically and politically engaged with the pedal to the metal. With today's edition of God in Country, here is host and author of the acclaimed yet controversial book, Excellence Killed the Church: How Mediocrity is Destroying America, Dr. Sean Michael Greener.
Hello. How is everybody doing? I hope everybody's doing well. We are super excited to be with you today. We want to offer our appreciation for you joining us. I know you got a million things you could be doing, and you don't win any real prize for this, for joining us. No red truck, no white truck, no Chevy truck. So there's no big prizes for it, and we're sorry to hear that. But they always say church is free, church is cheap, but it ain't free. And so we can't offer big prizes for joining us. But we appreciate you joining us. And if you would have come, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and surrounding areas, you could have this great and wonderful meal with a lot of homegrown and home-cooked stuff, plus some ice cream, which is always good. So I want to read something to you. By the way, today is the parable of the prodigal son, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what it really is about. Thank you to all of you, by the way, who shared last week's, or not last week, the week before, the message. We had more shares 2 weeks ago than we've ever had, which is really, really cool. And people from around the world have listened and reached out. We appreciate that. We want to give a shout out to the Cahalan Ellingson family. We sure do love you. We appreciate you. And several others, Miss Parker and Miss Bertelli and so many more. So I want to read this. This is Frederic Bastiat. If you've never read Bastiat, you should really read him. You will understand more about liberty and freedom and intelligent thinking. When misguided public opinion honors what is despicable and despises what is honorable, punishes virtue and rewards vice, encourages what is harmful and discourages what is useful, applauds falsehood and smothers truth under indifference or insult, a nation turns its back on progress and can be restored only by the terrible lessons of catastrophe. Frederic Bastiat. So I want to just explain why I read that to you. Of course, this week we've had a lot of things happen, and it seems the tables are turned. The super moral group is the left, and the immoral group apparently is the right. So the group that used to not care about morals and doing what's right is now up in arms, and the group that supposedly really, we just don't care, the conservatives don't care anymore about children, we keep them in cages and whatnot. None of that, by the way, is true. Not a bit of it is true, but people are flipping out over it. But don't buy into the feigned indignation, because I'll tell you why. It's just a smokescreen. It's just a smokescreen. There's things that are about to happen in this country that are going to be extraordinarily powerful, and they are coming. I thought I was on the fence as to whether or not it would happen the way I'd hoped it would happen, but it's coming. It's definitely coming. And it's going to get worse. It's going to get darker before it gets better, but the stuff that's coming out as early as this week, trickle, and then it's going to be a fire hose. So hold on to your hats if you wear a hat. So in the Bible, there's 3 parables that talk about loss and redemption, including the parable of the prodigal son, which is the last of the 3. Now I'm going to read the whole passage, Luke 15, and I'm reading this in context because I learned last week that there are many people who listen to this show who still don't have a Bible. By the way, if you go to drshawngreener.com and click the donate button, that money goes to buy Bibles for people, which we've sent out more and more and more. We're super excited about that. Well, there are people that listen to this program who have never held a Bible in their hand, ever, 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 ever. So I think it's cool. People have said, well, if they access to the internet, then they can download Bibles or they can look at Bibles. And a lot of the people are actually right now, I had 2 people contact me that are in Europe that go to a all-night library. It's an all-night, it's a internet cafe basically, but it's an e-library. And that's how they listen to this. They actually have to pay to listen to this show. I think that's extraordinary. I didn't know anybody had to do that. I hate that they have to pay. They don't pay me, but they pay the library or whoever, this internet cafe, in order to listen. And some people go to the library and have a library card and can listen for free, but they've never held a Bible in their hand. So we always, if you need a Bible and you want a physical Bible, we'll send you a beautiful one. So Luke 15, I'm reading this because I talk about the 3 different parables that Yeshua said, but I don't want to have you miss the context of what he said. So here we go. Hang on to your hat if you wear a hat. I suggest getting a hat so you have something to hold on to. The tax collectors and sinners kept gathering around to hear Yeshua. And the Proshim and the Torah teachers kept grumbling. This fellow, they said, welcomes sinners. He even eats with them. So he, being Yeshua, or Jesus, told them this parable. If one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them, doesn't he leave the other 99 in the desert and go after the lost one until he finds it? When he does find it, he joyfully hoists it onto his shoulders. And when he gets home, he calls his friends and his neighbors together and says, come celebrate with me because I have found my lost sheep. I tell you that in the same way there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who turns to God from his sins than over 99 righteous people who have no need to repent. Another example in verse 8, what woman, if she has 10 drachmas and loses one of those valuable coins, won't light a lamp, sweep the house, and search all over until she finds it? And when she does find it, she will call her neighbors, her friends together and say, come celebrate with me because I have found the drachma I've lost. In the same way, I tell you, there is joy among God's angels when one sinner repents. Again, Yeshua said, a man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the estate that will be mine. So the father divided the property between them. And as soon as he could convert his share into cash, the younger son left home and went off to a distant country, where he squandered his money in reckless living. But after he had spent it all, a severe famine arose throughout the country, and he began to feel the pinch. So he went and attached himself to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the carob pods the pigs were eating, and no one gave him any. At last he came to his senses and said, any number of my father's hired workers have food to spare, and here I am, starving to death. I'm going to get back up and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired workers. So he got up, and he started back to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was moved with pity. He ran and threw his arms around him and kissed him warmly. His son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But his father said to his slaves, quick, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger, and shoes on his feet, and bring the calf that has been fattened up and kill it. Let's eat and have a celebration. For this son of mine was dead, but now he's alive. He was lost, but now he's been found. And they began celebrating. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came close to the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked, what's going on? The servant told him, well, your brother has come back, and your father has slaughtered the calf that was fattened up because he had gotten him back safe and sound. But the older son became angry and refused to go inside. So his father came out and pleaded with him. Look, the son answered, I have worked for you all these years, and I have never disobeyed your orders, but you've never even given me a young goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. Yet this son of yours comes, who squandered your property with prostitutes, and for him you slaughter the fattened calf. Father said, Son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead, but has come back to life. He was lost, but has been found. Now, let me say this. Welcome to, we really appreciate the folks in chat for joining us. Thank you for everybody all the way from Florida to Maine and all around the world. We really appreciate that. It's an honor to have you. So the first two parables are the parable of the lost sheep and the parable of the lost coin, right? We got that. Those are the two. And I think it's really cool how Yeshua HaMashiach, or Jesus Christ, he imparted life's most crucial lessons to us through these amazing stories. It's just amazing to me that he's being faced with this massive accusation from these, Torah teachers and all this, the high and mighties, and he responds with a story. He's accused of eating with heathens, and yet he responds with a story. Isn't that something? By the way, our very best to Jill. We pray that she feels better. We miss her. Now, I want to say this. Back then, you want to think about this story was very easy to associate with because if you lived in the culture, you understood the cultural references, right? You lived there. That was part of your life. That's what you did. So you lived the cultural reference. It wasn't a cultural reference. It was the culture. That's how you lived. That's how you thought. That's how you breathed. And so this is what's happening now. And so we 2,000 plus years after the stories are told, we have to kind of catch up to the culture because it's just so radically different. A lot of really neat lessons to be heard, but they're so relevant. What amazes me is Yeshua, Jesus Christ. He told stories that are still so relevant today, and I think that's because he knew that one day we'd be reading this. Now, the story of the prodigal son. That was the last one that I read, and that one's pretty powerful. I think it's a neat story. Some have said, well, that never happened. It wasn't a real thing. All of that. Look, don't get caught up on whether it actually happened or it didn't happen, or Yeshua was relating some story of something he knew that happened, or even three stories. You could identify with it because it's something that, on the one hand, was very identifiable within culture. It wasn't unheard of. It happened, but when it happened, it was a big deal. It was a real big deal. We'll talk about more than that. Now, this parable, you may know it as the parable of the two sons, the parable of the lost son, or the running father, or the loving father. But let's talk about this word prodigal. It's very important we talk about that. It's defined as recklessly wasteful. Now, this story here, as you might have picked up on, is about a son, one of two, who lived by these two destructive words, recklessly wasteful. He was enslaved by the shallow desires of this world and his world. And what he wanted to do was he wanted his father to give him his rightful share, and I'm using air quotes, radio audience, his rightful share of wealth while his father was still alive. That was unheard of. Now, this greedy, selfish younger son, he didn't have the patience to wait until his father had lived a good and happy life, an honorable life, and then he just died a natural death, which is the time normally in that culture when property and wealth are rightly inherited and divvied up. Now, I think if you are a parent and you have sons or daughters, I think it's easier for you to put yourself in the place of that father who I think it would be heartbreaking. I'll tell you why in a minute, but it would be heartbreaking that first of all, that the son had this desire. In the first place, it's an unbelievable thing for a father to have worked with, side by his sons for some future accomplishment, helped them, fed them, clothed them, all of these things, given them security, and then all of a sudden, this ungrateful son comes to you and says what he says. I'm going to translate it here in a minute. And then, it's devastating. I can't imagine. If that was me, that would be so heartbreaking. Now, my son does often say that some things that I'm going to pass on when I pass, maybe just give them to him now, which, believe it or not, I actually have done that with my boots. All that said to say this, he's doing it in jest, sort of, but in a nice heart, somewhat. And but the father here in this story, he grants the greedy son's wish, only to wait eagerly and daily, hopefully, until the time that his lost son reunites with him after coming to his senses. Now, he remembered how he was raised. He remembered how his son was raised. He had faith and hope in how I've raised you better than that. And this in his mind, he knew how he'd raised his father, or raised his son. He knew he'd raised both sons the same, but this one son is just going crazy. But he knew it. He knew that foundation was in there. He had a lot of faith and trust in that. that he knew that he was raised in that certain way and that he would be repenting for his wrongdoings. I don't know. Let me put it in a different term. I'll interpret this way. How would you feel if your precious child looked at you one day and said, hey, you know what? I'm tired of waiting for you to die. I mean, it's been an infernal forever. You've been on this earth. Enough already. Just go on and die or give me my inheritance now. You know, how do you think you would feel at that, right? You'd be rightfully crushed. I would be. I'd be devastated. Doyle. And so far, he's the only one bucking for my stuff, which he's going to get anyway. So this parable has three main, although, you know, Lily's going to get my library, right? And so far she hasn't, you know, maybe bumped me off of a curb or something like that yet into a movie bus, but she is an avid reader, so I'm careful. You know, I'm careful around her. Although she's so small, I think I'm all right still. Anyway, my kids are awesome. They're wonderful people. So this parable, there's three main characters, and I think it's important to identify those out. The younger son who is lost. Hey, he's lost. There's no doubt about it. This guy is off the rails. He's crazy. Have you ever known somebody, just such a smart, good person, but they go off the rails? Something happens. I have a good friend of mine right now that his wife has left. Just kind of out of the blue, left, and all of a sudden they're divorced and got a new boyfriend and the whole bit and all this, and he's kind of devastated. And he's recovering. You know, he's in the grieving. It just happened, and he's kind of, what happened? I thought she would come to her senses and come back to me and come back to our family, but she didn't, and I doubt that she will. But I pray that she does. But hey, you know, it's devastating. It's a world rocker. You know, rocks your world. Then this other character is the merciful father. The father is, hey, he just wants to work hard and build some good stuff for his family. He just wants to work hard and give to his kids what they need for life. He's building something. Now, I don't know what they were building. I don't know what they did, but we know they're ranchers and farmers, right? Because he has a fatted calf. You can't be up in the city with a fatted calf tied to your front door. You know, you got to have a farm. So we can assume that he was a merciful father who was also a farmer. Now, I'm going to add this in. A lot of people don't like to talk about this, especially pastors. They don't like to talk about this. The third character deserves mention and not scorn, and I'm going to tell you who that is. That is the rightfully resentful older son. And I'm going to introduce you to each of these characters and tell you a little bit about each one of them. But I want to make it clearer, not that Yeshua needs any clarification, but in today's society, we need to kind of translate some stuff back and forth so that we understand the cultural importance and the inference by all the little things, because little things don't mean a lot, they mean everything. So here we go. There's a lot of meaning and symbolism in this parable. Now, a parable that Yeshua taught, I believe he's the world's greatest teacher ever. It's inarguable. I mean, we've got some great people that teach, but look how many people he influenced. Look at what people, would you die for a lie? I mean, this man taught people, and they died a torturous death to cling to the truth that he presented to them. So it's important for us to know the meaning and symbolism in the parable, and I'm going to give you some meanings there, and I hope it helps you. So Yeshua, he narrates this story when he was accused by the Pharisees of keeping company of sinners, right? Because that's super bad. You know, he's the rabbi, you don't stay with sinners. So preaching to the well instead of the sick. Church is a home for the sick, a hospital for the sick instead of home for the righteous. And the bottom line is that this whole, I'm kind of blown away, because if somebody said to me what they said to him, I'd be all puffed up looking for somebody's throat to punch. But not Yeshua. Yeshua's like, let me tell you all a story. Right? I mean, the first thing that comes to his mind, let me tell you all a story. I don't think he said y'all, but he might have. That might be where it comes from. This is written in the great Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, verses 1 through 2. Now, if you know me, you know I love the Gospel of Luke. I just think it's fantastic. But I also like the rest of it, so I like it all. Anyway, now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to hear him, and the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled, saying, this man receives sinners and eats with them. Now, what trips me up about this is, okay, so we've identified the fact of what happened, what was happening when he's about to tell this story. But I want to ask you, if somebody, you put yourself in his shoes, and you're going to church, you're doing all the right things, you know, you're doing whatever the right things are in your walk of faith, so you're observing all the things that you observe and honoring God, all this different stuff, and then somebody has the unmitigated gall to come up to you and say, well, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. You just aren't cutting the mustard. And by the way, you mess around with these unsaved. Unsaved wasn't a thing, but these sinners, these bad people, the people that don't tick the box, these Gentiles and the unclean, and the whole list of things, and they're impugning his character and his mission and his authority by saying, "Hey, this is what you do," right? They're setting this all up, and guess what was coming? The cross was coming. The cross was coming. These people didn't like him cutting into their deal. So Yeshua responds to their accusation, again, not by being defensive, not by lashing out, but by delivering these 3 parables of loss and redemption. So I love this parable. I absolutely love this parable because it's rich with multiple different things. You could do a whole sermon series on it. I just give you this. So go back to the spot. There was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them, this is Yeshua saying this, the younger of them said, by the way, let me interrupt myself. Here, listen. Do you not find it amazing that those Pharisees stopped what they were doing long enough? Tell me he wasn't an amazing teacher. They stopped their accusations long enough to listen to him tell 3 stories. Right? We finna kill you. And he's like, hold on, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you 3 stories. It was like a tactic, and it worked beautifully, because by the time he finished the stories, I guess they forgot which way they were going. Now, they remembered it later on, till eventually they hung him on a cross, but joke's on them, because he vacated that cross and vacated the grave, and by that we have redemption. So there was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that is coming to me." First of all, that cracks me up. Coming to you. I've told my son 100 times that ain't nothing coming to you. Ain't nothing coming to you. I give you something, you get something. But it isn't your room. This isn't your house. Them shoes you got on barely your shoes. Although he buys all the stuff now. And he knows he can have anything I have. I love the kid. I would give my daughter my shoes, but she looked like a clown running around as petite as she is with my old clown feet on. But the point is, I'd give him anything. But he says, "Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me." Well, when's it coming to him? It's coming to him when Dad dies. The unmitigated gall. And he divided his property. His dad said, "All right, I don't like it, but I'll do it." And he divided his property between them. Now, I'm not going to talk about the elder son, the good one, at this point. But let me just drop some knowledge on you. This part that reads, "And he divided his property between them." You know what that means? That means between the father, between the other son, and between the younger son. But guess what? The elder son didn't get to have it yet. Why? Because he didn't ask for it. Don't you reckon if that older child, the obedient child, said, "Well, hey, what's good for the younger is good for the older. I like to do a little living. I've been working on this farm forever. My hands hurt. My feet hurt. Woo, getting up early in the morning. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to go live on a sailboat." They didn't have a sailboat. Well, they kind of did. But I doubt that was going to do. He wasn't going gambling in Vegas. Vegas didn't exist as far as I know. But the point is, he could have, right? He could have taken advantage of it and gone, I'm out. Go ahead and give me mine too. What happens at that point? Who do you think the father is taking from to give to the younger son? Himself. He's taking from himself. That was 1/3, ostensibly, of his property, or maybe even 1/2. Don't you think it could have been 1/2? He's saying, "Hey, when I die, you're going to get this. So let's settle on 1/2. How about that? Let's do that. Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me." Ain't nothing coming to you, fool. And he divided his property between them. That's what I'd have said. That's not what the father in the story said. And I added on fool for the emphasis. And maybe a few other things. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all that he had. Man, don't miss that. He gathered all that he had. Where did he get all that he had? From Daddy. Daddy worked hard. Daddy got up early in the morning. He didn't get out of any work. He was the chief worker. He got in there and got after it. And now, all of a sudden, all that he had, it's all of a sudden his stuff. What was Dad's is now his. Dad's still alive. Now, Dad's got to figure out how to make it. He's got to figure out how to make it on half. Well, he took a journey into a far country. He didn't even stay around. He's like, I'm getting out of this one cow town or one lamb town or whatever it is they said back then. I don't know what they said. It's probably really good, though. I'm getting out of here. I'm done. I'm out, Any of you grow up in a town, you're like, first thing I do when I graduate high school is I'm out. 13 days from graduation, I was in boot camp, Navy boot camp. Now, I wasn't in a huge rush to get out of town. I just was a huge rush to get on with my life, do some stuff. I wanted to get in the thick of stuff. I didn't have any animus toward my town, but there's a lot of people that I hear, and you know what's funny? I can't wait to get out of this town. And I go back now, and those people never did leave. They never did leave. They're still right up in that town, whining and moaning. Anyway, gathered all he had, and he took a journey into a far country. And there, he squandered his property in reckless living. Now, he took all that he'd accumulated to that time in his entire life, and he ended up with nothing. Have you ever thought of that? And I don't think this was a real long time. You ever see people win the lottery? You ever hear within 5 years, these gigantic lotteries, people are out of money. People are out of money. If I'm out of money from winning the lottery, it's because I gave it away. But I'm just saying, I don't want that much stuff. But I'm just saying, Lord can test me and see how it works out. If he wants to test me on that winning the lottery business, I'll do it. So he took all that he'd accumulated up that time his entire life. He ended up with nothing. He had such a grand idea. Oh, I can do it better. Oh, I can live better. I can do all these things. I know better than you do. You're just an old farmer. And then, for too long, he's got nothing. He didn't end up with a little bit. He ended up with nothing. Couldn't even feed himself. Didn't even have the money for the G at the end of nothing. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country. Now, let's stop there for a second. Remind me if I forget and I get off on a tangent. He was in a foreign country. Now, this is a Jew in a foreign country who has said, I'm going to be subservient to this non-Jew, ostensibly a non-believer. Even to such an extent that he said, hired himself out to one of these citizens of that country who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. Jews don't eat pork. They don't even be around pigs. Jews don't have anything to do with pigs. Nope, don't let your pigs come up in here. But he's hiring himself out and going into the fields to feed the pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs eat. Now, I don't know what pods are, but I can tell you this, I'm not hurrying to get me some. But he wanted them. He was so hungry. The inference here is he was so hungry, he was so in lack, that he said, man, just let me have some of them. But you know what? The passage says nobody gave him anything. He couldn't even listen, I don't want you to understand how bad things were. I don't want you to miss this. He couldn't even get pig food. Busy feeding the pigs. He's like, man, if I could just have some of what they ate. And nobody even gave him that. Times were tough. But when he came to himself, you ever come to yourself? You ever be off the tracks, off the rails a little bit? Oh, man, I know that path as well as I know this one. Right? Off the path, off the rails. Hurts, habits, and hang-ups that come to get us, or we go to them. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread? Which tells you he didn't even have bread. More than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger. He was dying of starvation. I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. Let me stop there. Remind me, you're in charge of this. I didn't know. Sitting in that chair, you're in charge of reminding me where I was in case I get lost. Listen, folks, don't misunderstand this story. It does not mean, I had a professor in seminary say this, and I was blown away. This passage is not about so much, it is to some degree, about all of a sudden he came to himself, right? He comes to his mind, and he says, I've done such wrong. No. What he did was, he said, you know what, this all around me, this sucks. I don't like it. I'm hungry. I stink. I don't have any food and no hopes of food, and I'm lower than the servants of these people here, and nobody will even give me any food. Man, I'm in bad shape. Before I die of hunger, I better carry myself home, back to my home, to the father I maligned and disrespected. Listen, you need to understand that when this happened, if this were to happen in a Hebrew family, that father, oh man, respect in the community, all gone. People didn't sit around and go, oh, that's too bad about Hervé. He ran off. He wanted his father's money. Daddy, that's a shame. I know that boy was raised better than that. That's not how it worked. They said, what's wrong with that daddy that would have a son that would do that to him? Something wrong with him. He's been cursed. You know, the Hebrew community has come up with all this stuff. I will arise and go to my father, and I'll say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Well, you're right about that. Treat me as one of your hired servants. He says, look, I'm not even going to try to be. It didn't even enter his head what was about to happen. I'll just come work for you. Make me do whatever you want. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven, and before you I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand, and shoes on his feet, and bring the fatted calf, and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead, and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now, I want you to understand. Look here. Yeshua didn't say in this story, and he smelled bad coming up the lane because he's been in pig poo. You know what I'm saying? What do you call it? What are pigs? Swine feces. He's been in swine feces. Been living among them, trying to survive on the food that they don't eat. I think a brother smelled bad. I don't know about you, but I think he smelled bad. In fact, I bet on it. So here he comes running up to his dad. His dad runs to him, which, by the way, this is completely culturally, it's a no-do. You know, no, run? No. Wearing a cloak that he'd have to gather up and expose his legs. You didn't do that in public. He's not running to him. The elders don't run to the younger. The younger run to the elder. But he did. He was so excited. And immediately, he begins the restoration process. He begins the restoration. And listen, the younger son, he didn't have any idea. The prodigal son, no idea that this is going to happen. None whatsoever. Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him and put a ring on his hand. Best robe, best ring, and put shoes on his feet. There's a meaning to all that. There's a meaning to all that. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Come on, and fatten up this calf. Let's skip over whatever thing we were going to have. Whatever we're going to use it for, we're doing it now. The power of now. So we're doing it now. He didn't say, bring the fatted calf and let's check it out. Let's make sure it's, give it a few days. Let him go on and get a shower because he stinks. Right? No. Put the robe right on him. Put the ring right on him. Put the shoes right on him. And go ahead on and kill that. We're going to have a party. We're not on a party tomorrow. But the next day or the next day or the next day, see how he does. See if he's good enough. See if he's done the right thing. See if is he fully understanding what's going on here? Nope. Let me give him a chance to do some stuff. Let me see how well he works now. Because he's humble. Let me see him in the field for a few days. See, can he abide by the rules? See if he's got a little too much of himself left in him. No, he said, bring it now. Bring all these things now. Restoration starts right now. And they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field, and as he drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. Now he's busy working. He's out in the field. He's like, working for them. I don't know if he sang this song, but I don't know if he's even doing a shovel. I'm doing, radio audience, I'm doing the action of a shovel or a hoe or some kind of thing. Do people even use hoes nowadays? Okay, gotcha. Okay. I just wasn't sure. I don't know. I mean, I don't see them much anymore. You don't see them advertised. Get your hose over here. I don't think that would go over well. Right? We got some experts. And he called one of his servants and asked what these things meant. Hey, what's going on? What's going on? The older brother doesn't know a thing about it. He's far enough away. He comes up. What's going on? What was all the hubbub? What's happening? Somebody hit the lottery? I don't know. By the way, I'll get a GM truck. If I do hit the lottery, I will get a GM truck. Just so you'll feel better. I know you're worried for me. Staley's worried for me riding around in the Ford. I don't want him to worry. Lord knows. And so he asked what this means, and the servants, the word got to the servants. He said to him, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has received him back safe and sound. Listen, don't miss this. He's received him back safe and sound, and he told him all this stuff that he did wrong, and he told him, I'm going to do better, I'll never do that again, and he told him, I'll work twice as hard, and he told him all of this stuff. I'm a better person for being... Nope. He just received him safe and sound. Safe and sound! That was the benchmark for a party. He's back safe and sound. But he answered his father, look, these many years I have served you, and I have never... His father came out and entreated him. In other words, the father comes out and sees this older boy. And hey, nothing against him. He's been working his butt off. Look, are we allowed culturally to say black sheep of the family anymore? Or does it have to be white sheep or purple sheep or multicolored, non-specific gender, blah, 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 sheep? Well, black sheep of the family is the saying, I'll just say it. Don't mean anything about black sheep. Sorry, it's a thing. Black sheep was an anomaly, right? Black sheep, so that's why we say it. Anyway, so I'm using it that way. Don't send me letters. You can send me letters, but make them funny, because I need to laugh. So, he's the black sheep of the family. The younger's the black sheep of the family. He's the squeaky wheel. What happens to the squeaky wheel? All the time getting the grease. Right? But the one's doing the right thing, he's like, I'm up here working. You see I'm out in the field all the way over there. I didn't even know about it until I got close. I was so far away working so hard for you as I always have. I've never disobeyed your command, yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. You're cutting up the calf. You're cooking the calf. The big deal. I mean, that was a big deal. And you never even want to give me a little old goat. I don't suspect he asked for a goat, to be honest with you. I don't think this kind of guy, don't be too hard on this guy. I don't think he was a bad guy, folks. I don't think he was a bad guy. I really don't. I don't want you to think he is either. I don't think he was a bad guy. He said, I never asked for anything. I just went to work. Daddy said, how, jump. I asked how high on the way up. Right? That's a joke, Nate. You'll get that in a minute. But when this son of yours, this is the son speaking to the father now. But now he's mad, folks. You don't miss that. He's mad. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes. Let me tell you what was bad back then. Anytime prostitutes was in the sentence, it was bad. Stuff has gone south. Bad. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him. You wouldn't give me a goat, but you're going to give him a calf. And he did everything wrong. He did everything wrong. He couldn't have done more wrong. He disrespected you while you were still alive. He said, give me my stuff now. Give me my share now. I don't care if you do without. You didn't die fast enough. Let me have my stuff. I want to go live it up. And by the way, I don't like your farm. I don't like your ranch. I don't even like this town you chose to live in. I'm out. Right? He's totally disrespected the father in every cultural way. And now you're going to kill the calf for him. But he said to him, oh, don't miss this, folks. Do not miss this. There is such power in this statement. Son, capital S. Read it when you get home. If you're driving, don't read it now. Don't pull it up on your thing. The police officer, he's at the crash scene. And why'd you crash? Oh, I was reading, and I pulled up Pastor Sean talking about, Dr. Sean was talking about, pull up this, and I wanted to read it because he said capital S, and then he goes, look, you can't be having your phone. Oh, I thought it was just don't text and drive. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Wait till you get home. Capital S, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost, and he is found. Now let me say this. I just want to say this. This is a message of to some degree repentance. I want to drive this point home. I don't want you to think that this younger son, this prodigal son, suddenly came to his senses out of nowhere and said, oh, I have been, you know what? And then put his hands on his hips like this. I don't think he did that. But you know what? I have messed up. Now I feel bad about how I messed up. I messed up so bad. Let me ask you something. Sometimes you got to be at the bottom to see where you are. Sometimes you've got to be at the very worst place. Man, there's no worse place than this. And here I see it. I couldn't see it before. But now I see it. Now I see where I am. Now I see how I smell. Now I see how other people look at me. Now I remember where I was. I was way up here, and now I'm way down here. And this sucks. This draws air real bad, and you know what? I don't know how I didn't notice I was headed this way, and here I am at the bottom. Let me tell you where the bottom is. He thought he was at the bottom, and he was trying not to be in the stinky pigsty. He was trying not to eat what the slop left over. He couldn't even get these pods, so he's just eating the junk. What do people throw out the pigs? You guys know pig farmers, they throw out slop. They throw out food that wasn't eaten. They throw out just rotten food. Pigs eat anything. He's eating that. He's not even getting the pods, which give them... Anyway, we'll get too far with that. I'll go on and get hungry. Good news is we got a lot of food here. But the point of this is, listen. It's not so much about repentance as it is suddenly he saw where he was. Lest you think he was at the bottom there in that field with the pigs. He wasn't. Let me tell you where the bottom was. The bottom was when he's looking at his daddy who has worked so hard to build something for the family. And he looked at him and he said, you know what, I wish you'd go on and die. That's the bottom where your mind goes, hey, you know what I'm going to do? This is what I'm going to do. The bottom wasn't in the field where the outer trappings of the sickness of the mind and the soul were so evident. Nope. Let me tell you where else the bottom is. There's two bottoms in this story. The other bottom is he comes home and he runs to his dad. And his dad looks down the lane and he sees his son. And he turns to his servant and he says, go get the older brother. We're going to lynch this fool. We're going to lynch this disrespectful fool. Or tell you what, let's do. I'm going in the house. I give you the authority to turn him away. Tell him, get off of my property. Ain't his anymore. This doesn't belong to him. He can go on. Embarrass me in front of the whole community. Embarrass me in front of the church. Now, it wasn't called church then. But embarrass me among my faith and my culture and my people. My traditions. Go ahead and disregard all of it. Make everybody say, what's wrong with that father? Something wrong with him. Go ahead on. You tell him, don't come around here anymore. Don't come around here anymore. It doesn't belong to you. That's bottom. He was already at the bottom when it came to his mind, where his mind said, you know what I'm going to do. He thought he was at the bottom in the field, but guess what? He wasn't. So he takes a chance, and he stands in front of his father, and the redemption and the mercy he never saw possible came to him. He never saw it coming. Don't you understand? He never saw the reaction of his father in his mind. I'll tell you right now, I thought a lot about what this father must have been like. I'd like to meet him, to tell you the truth. I'd like to meet the dude, hang out with him. Maybe have a non-alcoholic old booze if they have those in heaven. We could have alcohol in heaven, but we won't get drunk or anything like that, but we don't need it. Anyway, the point is this. It's not about what we're going to drink when I get with this dude and hang out with him. Say, how was this? What was this like? I think I want to. Maybe I won't. I don't know. That doesn't matter. The point here is this. The guy interests me. He interests me because he was a good man. He was a hard-working man. He was an honorable man. You could tell people in the community respected him. He got a lot of servants up in here. He's got servants right nearby. He's got servants way out in the field where you could just barely hear the music and whatnot and dancing and all. I don't know what kind of dancing they could hear. Probably like breakdancing or something. I don't know what. I don't know what kind of dance they were doing. But bottom line, they were dancing and all that stuff. You could hear from far away. He was respected, y'all. He was not just a regular dude. And he has been so maligned. You got two kids, and one responds so differently. How many of y'all have multiple kids? And some of your kids, don't raise your hand, the ones I know. And some of your kids, you just think, what happened? I raised this one this way, this one over here doing this. What in the world? What's wrong with you? Let me take a harder look at you, see if you look like me. Maybe you aren't mine. I'm going to go talk to Mama. And look at the milkman. You can't tell that joke anymore. I would look at the milkman. See, come stand next to the milkman. Nobody knows what a milkman is anymore. I said that to somebody who was 28 years old. They were like, milkman? What? And then I realized, oh, that's something that thing doesn't work anymore. Yes, this message is to some degree about forgiveness and unconditional love of a father toward his lost son. Yeah, it's definitely about that. That's a no-brainer. But let's not get too hung up on the whole repentance thing, because I think that most of the repentance was brought on by being right near the bottom. Sometimes, folks, how many people do you know? Maybe it's you. Listening around the world and all across the United States, thank you all for joining us. Thank you. God bless you. Share this message. When we're done, there'll be a link created. Just share it with everybody you know. Here's the thing. Here is the thing. You realize over time, and this is, I'll put this out there, you do with it what you want. I'm speaking to me right now, just for fun. How many times have I screwed up royally? Hurts, habits, and hang-ups. I've done the wrong thing. I knew it was the wrong thing. Nobody, look, come on. 99.99999%, I'll put 10 or 15 nines in there. Of that number, of us know when we do something really super wrong, we know it's wrong. We're like, well, I don't know what happened. That didn't turn out well. No, we knew. We knew. The way this kid was raised, you know he knew too. You know he knew. He was like, nope. I'm not listening. Not listening. I'm going to go do this. It'll turn out fine for me. In spite of the embarrassment that this father had to feel in front of the whole community, his entire culture, the loss of influence that he probably suffered, and then he's got to deal with his older son. All of that. Even though the son was taken over by sinfulness and just the sheer thing about, you want to be away from us? You're leaving? You're leaving this, our family place here. You're leaving. Because guess what they didn't do? They didn't go off and get it. Well, we're going to buy a house in the subdivision, No. We live here. This is what we do. We all work on the farm. And then when I pass, you get the farm. What kind of hope did this father have when he gives his son everything? And he realizes, man, I got to come. I got to pray this boy comes back. That he's able to come back. How many of you have seen your child? Now, I know somebody listening right now, your child's in heaven. Your child made bad choices, put a needle in her arm, and she departed this earth. Not because of how you raised them. Every time they left, you prayed to God, please God, bring my child home. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. He stumbled. He was an embarrassment. Listen, while the son was gone, the father kept his eyes. Come on, don't miss this. His father, I'm going to look down the lane today. His back is turned to the lane. He's working. He's doing this and that. He turns back. Let me see if my son's coming. Let me see if he's turned around. Let me just keep looking. Maybe he has. Father, bring him home. Father, get into his head. Father, make him want to do a better thing. The younger son, he was selfish, he was indifferent, he was extravagant, he was totally driven by the sinful pleasures of life. Listen, you got to understand how far you have to go in order to do this in this culture. He didn't even leave his home. He didn't even leave his town. He left his country. Gotta wonder how that happens. And all the things that he did were so loathsome. They were so bad. His misery got to a point where even the pigs, he was envying the food that pigs ate. His condition was worse than pigs. Hurts, habits, and hang-ups, folks. While you're thinking about it, they seem adventurous. While you're thinking about it, they seem fun. They seem exciting. But they're not. They enslave you. They rob you of not only all your stuff, your material possessions, but they rob you of your self-respect, your self-confidence, your clarity, the dignity. Listen, every human being, I don't care who you are, every human being, you just want to be respected. You just want to be dignity. You want to have your dignity. You don't want to lose your dignity. He thought he was unrecoverable. He thought, I'm going to remind you of somebody I talk about a lot. The Christ is on the cross. He's nailed to the cross. The final act of indifference to the Lord, to the King, to the righteous one, to the Redeemer. And the one guy, the one prisoner who deserved it, is hurling insult after insult after insult at Jesus. I thought you were the Messiah. Why don't you go ahead and call yourself down from here? And the other one said, remember me when you come to your kingdom. Man, oh man, oh man. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? This guy doesn't imagine that as bad as he's been, that his father is going to give him a ring and a robe and shoes and give to him these things. He doesn't imagine that. He imagines that he's just going to be in another field doing servant's work. He never thought it would happen. He never could imagine. He just wanted to know, could I get just the scraps? I'm not asking for anything but scraps. Listen, folks, he had no claim. He had no claim. Just hire me on. That's all I ask. He didn't have the right to be called a son of an honorable and kind man, such as his father was. The only hope he had was better shelter and a little bit of food. Now the father, he's the epitome of mercy and love. He could have punished that son unforgettably, mercilessly. But he made an immediate choice to forgive, accept, and restore. Let me tell you something. I'm by no means representative of this father. But there have been people that have done me wrong that I never thought I could forgive. I never thought I'd forgive. And somehow God empowered me to be able to do it. Now, some's a work in progress. You know, a lot of folks don't want to throat punch. But the bottom line is that's a work in progress. But let me tell you what. On the other side of that, there's some people that I never thought would ever be able to forgive me. And they did. Listen, if you think of a son asking his father a property division while he's still alive, there'd be lawsuits. This happens today, lawsuits. Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, no, you're not. You're not doing that. Younger or older brother's going, no, you're a fool. Nope. Time for you to get to stepping because you're leaving with nothing. I'll give you a piece of bread, some butter on it. See how far that takes you. But you're not messing with my inheritance because guess what? He takes it now. Guess what? That lowers the value of the whole property. Lawsuits. That's how it would be now. Be a big fight. How would it have been? You know that father. You know what he could have done? He could have stood there for a minute, crossed his arms, bobbed his head a little bit, and listened to the whole story about how, I'm not trying to be in this farm, this town, this country. I'm trying to get out of here. I know a better way to live. Go ahead and give me what's mine. Go ahead and give me what's mine. I'm ready to roll. And the father just sitting there listening. Okay. Get to stepping. You're not my son anymore. You're going. You're out. You aren't leaving with air quotes your share. You're leaving with nothing, and you're leaving today, right now. Father could have done that. Don't you understand that in this culture, the father did that? He could have easily done that. And he would have been viewed among the community better than he was than by forgiving. Because guess what? He forgave. He forgave him immediately when he gave him the stuff. He said, I forgive you. Listen, don't borrow no money from some. Do not lend money to somebody. Come on. You lend somebody money, it better be okay for you to never get that money back. Because this father already decided, I'll never see this. If I never see him again, I know what I'm getting into. I'm giving this. I may never get this back. I may never get him back. But he didn't do it. Instead, he waited and waited and waited. And he prayed that he would come. And to such an extent that he ran to him. He was waiting. He was waiting for him to come. He was wanting, when he looked down the lane, to see that familiar face. Now let me tell you something. That boy, I bet, was skinny as a rail. I bet he didn't look like he looked when he left. Scripture talks about Yeshua after he was tortured, beaten, and murdered, and didn't even look like a man. Sometimes they don't look like what we thought they were going to look like. We only recognize them if we're waiting for them, if we're anticipating them to return. Fine robe, a ring, and sandals. The robe and ring represented authority and dignity, while sandals were worn by masters, not by servants. Killing of the fatted calf. I'm going to say this, and you take from this what you want to take. The father didn't have only one lost son. Before that son came back, he had two. Don't you think that strained the relations between the elder son? They responded in vastly different ways. The father was patient, loving, and he gently convinced his son, I believe, convinced him, hey, let's look at this a different way. Someday you might need grace. Don't be hard on this older son. If it were me, I'd be sad. If it me, I would be mad. I'd be saying, come on. Some of you might live in a family. I'm not saying mine was like this, but maybe you weren't the squeaky wheel, but the squeaky wheel got some grease all the time. Got some forgiveness all the time. Got some exceptions made for them all the time. He was mad. This son of yours, he says, but when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him. This son, I'm the good son, and I didn't get a goat, let alone a calf. And I haven't done anything wrong. Man, I don't know. That's maligned. The son is maligned at this point, and he's feeling every bit of it. This son of yours doesn't even want to be. He doesn't even listen. This son of yours, in this case, says he's no brother of mine. He's no kin of mine. He's no blood of mine. I don't know where he came from, but he darn sure doesn't belong to me. The father didn't disown him, but the brother did. How many of us might have a sibling or a friend or a close relationship like, and mom and daddy didn't disown them, but we did. I'm done with you. Raise my right hand and say guilty. Listen, we can agree with the reaction. We can understand why he has this reaction. The reason why this son, who is also a good man, can't understand the father's reaction is because mercy and grace to that extent is unfathomable. Listen, the boy coming back from the pig slop smelling like poop, he never thought in a million years that his father would do that. It was unfathomable. It's unfathomable to him, and it's unfathomable to the older brother, and it's unfathomable to the whole community. Don't you know that when that man took that boy back in and did all those things for him the first time that boy went to town, don't you know some folks' heads were bobbing? I don't trust you. Daddy may forgive you. He may restore you. I don't trust you. How about that person that comes into church the first time after they went the way? They went the wrong way. How about that person that made some bad decisions and there was major, major consequences and they're climbing back up. They got their claws and they're trying to climb back. I'm just trying to get back to where I was, even if I get half of where I was. And that person's getting their life together, trying. And all those religious Rottweilers around them are looking, going, you ain't got me fooled. You do not have me fooled. Yeah, you don't smell like pig poop anymore, but guess what? You're not fooling me. Yeah, you got your father's fine robe on because he gave it to you like a fool. You got that ring on because he gave it to you like a fool. Don't you know that older brother, when he went into town, when he went into town, don't you know some folks were over there, some people maybe he went to school with, come out, I see your brother's back. How you feel about that? They're not asking, wanting to know how he feels about it. They're wanting to see him mad. They're wanting to see him go, oh, let me tell you something. And then some curse words, swear words come flying out. No, I'm playing along. But I'm mad. Mad as a hornet. Nope, I don't like it. I'm not for it. You ought to tell your dad that. I already told him. I'm mad. So if I were you, I wouldn't work hard on that farm anymore. I'd do very little as I could. Barely. Just barely. You don't want to mess up and lose your inheritance. That'd be what your dad would do. I guess that's what you got to do. You got to act a fool and get given everything, and then get given everything again. Oh, by the way, who that other? Now he comes back. He's fully restored. Guess what he did? Another inheritance. Guess who that share comes from? From the daddy. And you know what? Might tap into the brother's inheritance just a little bit. Don't you know people in that town were looking at him going, the brother going, I don't know. Wouldn't be me. Wouldn't be me means, well, you a punk. You're being a punk right now. Maligning his manlyhood, his masculinity, his strength, his dignity, his character. But he didn't. Let me tell you something. I don't know. My dad wasn't the most loving father. I'm going to be real upfront with you. I'm not talking bad about him. He's in heaven with the Heavenly Father now, grinning and all kind of stuff, making food. My dad could cook. You're willing to wait till 9:30 to eat. It was worth waiting for. Let me just tell you this. He was a hard man. I didn't get a lot of lovey-dovey stuff from him. Let me tell you something. Toward the end of his life, I had serious conversations with him. And he was a man filled with regret. I say this to say that. And that to say this, listen, don't mess around. If you've got relationships that are fractured and the person is trying hard and they're doing well, and you say, I'm not forgiving you. I am not forgiving you. I am so done with you, you don't even know. Now, if it's a toxic relationship, I want you to understand something. Don't expose yourself to danger. You can forgive them and keep a distance. You can forgive them and be safe and secure. You don't have to crawl up into their craziness. But you can forgive them. Listen, people make decisions that they make. And sometimes their life is so scarred. And listen, there's a lot of shrapnel in life. Life is a contact sport. Whether you're saved or you're not saved, whether you're a believer or you're not, but life is a contact sport. I'm telling you right now, it's a contact sport. There's a lot of elbowing, a lot of throat punching going on. And sometimes those elbows that are getting thrown, sometimes those knives that come out are your own people, the people you love the most, the people you trust the most, the ones you think got your back. Sometimes it's just hard to look at somebody that so maligned you and forgive them. It is, isn't it? Our merciful Father isn't the kind to force a person into his kingdom. Just like in the story, the heavenly, this Father, it's such a beautiful story. He agreed when the son said, I'm out of here. I'm ready to go. The father didn't say, no, you're not going anywhere. You've got work to do. He didn't compel him to stay. He said, go on. Go on. Be safe. Our Heavenly Father, he's saddened when one of his children walks away and says, I don't want any more part of you. But he waits at the door of heaven, looking. He waits to welcome back the sinner. Forgive him all, every bit of it. And he says, I will remember your sins no more. He's not resentful. He's loving and he's caring. And he just wants us back with him. Listen, so much so that the fatted calf that father, for that prodigal son, God sent his son. A price we could never pay on our own, so that we could have eternal life. Listen, don't miss this. Remember when this parable was told. It was told in answer to, this was Yeshua's answer to the Pharisees when they questioned Yeshua about him dining with sinners. It was a way to emphasize the need to save the lost, which must be done by allowing them to come near the Father and accept their repentance, so that grace and mercy is bestowed on them. It just implies that the Father is merciful and forgiving and will gladly accept you with open arms. All you have to do is walk toward him. But here's what I would recommend you do. I would recommend, when the Father is up the lane, to run. To run. Don't waste another day. Let me tell you something. You don't know how many more days or hours you have.
Dr. Greener returns next Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And in the meantime, he'll be working to restore your freedom and your liberty. He will engage in the collision of faith and politics for you and with you. In the meantime, remember to follow him on Twitter at the Ninja Pastor and follow him on Facebook. Dr. Greener's controversial book, Excellence Killed the Church: How Mediocrity is Destroying America, is available on Amazon and at other fine booksellers. Or you can get a copy directly through his website, www.drshawngreener.com, where you can also listen to interviews and speeches and messages free of charge. Show archives are available on iTunes through drshawngreener.com.